A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGeek webinar series. The topic for today's session is parallel automation, and we have with us today Divya Manohar and Karpagam Balasubramaniam. Divya is in the field of software testing for 2 years. She's very passionate about automation testing. She has also worked on cross-browser testing. Karpagam, on the other hand, has completed MSc Software Engineering from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore in 2013. Based on research done while in college, she published a paper titled Case Ring Theoretic Approach for Matrix Multiplication in the Proceedings of ACM Digital Library and ICWET 2011 by presenting it in the International Conference on Emerging Trends in Technology, January 2012 in Mumbai. She did her 7th and 10th semester internships with eBay, which motivated her to start her career there. She is currently working for the C2C selling team, focusing on consumer selling methods on the site. Her areas of interest include programming languages, networks, cryptography, and responsive design. So our presenters will be giving the presentation for the first 45 minutes, and we will open up for a quick round of Q&A during the last 15 minutes of our session today. I request all the attendees to start sending in your queries from 3:30 p.m. onwards, and I will be sending across the relevant questions over to Divya and Karpagam from 3:45 p.m. onwards today. So without any further delay, I will now hand over the session over to Divya and Karpagam. Over to you.
Hi. Hello everyone. A very good evening to all of you. I will now be, I'm Divya here and Karpagam is here along with me. Both of us together will be presenting a few facts about parallel automation. This is one of the processes which we very keenly follow here at eBay. So I'll just start off now. So yeah, parallel automation, it's all about testing actually. All of us follow agile methodology, and we have like a very aggressive roadmaps, and all our requirements keep changing drastically. So we came up with this methodology where we can actually, suppress the time which is taken so much for testing. So what we do here with parallel automation is that we convert the test cases into automation simultaneously as PD folks develop their features. So in this way, we can actually reduce a lot of P1 and P2 cases and also increase the throughput. So what we do here is, as and when the dev team develops the features, we also develop the automation scripts and hand it over to them for dev testing, and they will actually test out their features for P1 and P2 cases, and then deliver and then make the dev to QE handoff. So we have a lot of reasons why we have to go for parallel automation. You can reduce a lot of manual effort, and you can also have early QE sign-off. And since most of your cases are automated, the QE can go ahead and actually focus on a lot of the corner cases. And since all the end-to-end cases are automated, the PD will have a better idea about the entire product end-to-end, and we will know the workflow thoroughly. So the next slide shows about the QE engagement. So without parallel automation, it's all about QE being involved only, after the PD handoff happens. But with parallel automation, QE will also be involved from the design phase. They will be helping the PD with the design and everything. And during the feature development phase, QE will also be involved in automation. That is, they will not be sitting silently until the PD hands off the features to QE. And once that is done, both PD and QE will together be able to test the features using the automation suites. So this is a slide where I'm going to explain about the process and execution that we follow along with parallel automation. So the first step that happens here is the test case development. So once you get your requirements, you write all the use cases and all the necessary test cases that are required for this particular feature. And then the next is the design phase, where both the PD and the QE folks sit together, decide on the architecture, the design of the feature and everything. And then eventually what happens is you start sharing information which is required for parallel automation development. Now for web automation, the information which will primarily be required is the element IDs based on the mocks. So you have the mocks and you have the different UI components in your mocks, and for each of those components we assign element IDs. And similarly for service automation, what happens is we will be sharing the WSDL and the request and response for the services. So this way QE can go ahead and start off with their automation suite development, while simultaneously the PD starts off with their feature development. So if you have a 4-week sprint in an agile methodology, so what happens is the first week we spend basically on test case development and then the design phase, and then sort out all the requirements and freeze the requirements during the first 1 week. And then later the remaining 2 weeks will be development, both by the PD and the QE. The PD and the QE will finish their development at least in 1.5 weeks, so that the rest of the time can be spent on dev testing. That is, the developers will use the automation suite developed by the QE folks to actually do the dev testing. Now what we do here is, once the automation suite is developed, we use Jenkins and we set up CI jobs using these automation suites. And we make the endpoint configurable. Like for example, when a developer, you have a dev box and all your code is there present in your dev box. So as and when you finish developing your features, you can just point the CI job to your dev machine and then test it out there itself. And once that is done, you can then deploy it in a test environment, and then again continue the execution and see how many failures are there. And then depending on that, you can do the dev to QE handoff. So what happens is, before the dev to QE handoff itself, you've eliminated almost all the P1 and P2 cases. So later, after the QE handoff is done, the testing team will also point it to the testing environment and then go ahead with it. So once that is done, the last 1 week in your sprint will be spent entirely on testing. But since the feature testing and entire thing is automated, so what happens is your feature testing happens really quickly, and then the QE can concentrate on the corner cases and also give early sign-off. And just before the sign-off, you can have a regression sweep, which will help you detect any other bugs. Before going on to the next slide, I'd just like to mention another thing here. In agile methodology, one thing which can always be expected is the repeated change requests that keeps coming from our product managers. So in order to cater to that, parallel automation helps a lot. Like say in your 3rd week of sprint, there's some new request which has come which does not affect any of the existing features, but it's an extra work there. So what happens is, we can run the automation suite. Once the development is done, we can run the automation suite and make sure that nothing has broken previously, and also take 1 day's time to add the new cases, excuse me, to add the new cases and develop accordingly. So I'll just explain more clearly on what web automation is and how we go about with web automation. So we basically use the Selenium grid architecture for web automation. So once the mocks are ready for the UI, we convert each and every UI component. We assign each and every UI components with IDs. So these IDs will be used to identify the UI components for testing. Once that is done, we put everything in a property file, and we also decide on the page URLs and the transitions for each and every page, like what button click goes to the next page and which page it goes to and all those things. Then once that is done, what the QE folks will do is start developing the page components based on these IDs and the page transitions. And then once that is done, each and every test case is converted into a test plan, and the same will be set up in a CI job, where the dev can use it for dev testing and the QE can use it for feature testing. So I'll just walk you through a couple of screenshots. So this is how we have it in our property file with all the element IDs. And this is how we create the page components. So if you see, there's a property file which is being pointed to, the page URL, and the link page ID identifier is nothing but to identify the, if you're on the right page. Like, say if you're on a payment page or something like that, then the right thing to probably identify that page would be a some transaction details. So we have an ID like that. And once that is done, we initialize each and every component. Towards the end of the screenshot, you can see that there is like link edit item and link edit. All these are nothing but the UI components which are there, and we initialize those things as well with the IDs which were shared across by the PD folks to the QE folks. And then we move on to creating test plans. Creating test plans, you have to create test data and assign those test data to those page components and then perform the functionalities which are required. And then finally, we'll have assertion statements to just decide and see if whatever is happening is the expected result. But whatever I've explained till now is only for functional testing. That is, you're only seeing if I click on a particular button, if I'm being transited to the next button, next page or not. But what we really also want is to validate and see if a button's particular width and length are as expected, or any page component for that matter. For that, we actually use we've developed a tool called as cross-browser compatibility tool, which helps verifying the UI components across all the browsers. So we consider only the tier 1 browsers here, and how we go about doing it is, first we actually take up one browser which we actually decide as the base browser, say for example Firefox, and then what PD and QE folks will do together is to verify manually once and see if everything works fine in that particular browser. And then using this tool, we capture the spec details from that one particular browser in a property file, and we feed that to this particular tool. And what this tool does is it simultaneously executes all of these, all the spec validation across all the browsers, and it verifies against that golden copy property file which we provided earlier, and it gives you a report stating which are the browsers which are causing the trouble. So this is how we do spec validation. So using this in web automation, we try to achieve at least 90% of automated use cases so that minimal effort is spent manually. The next couple of slides are about service automation and how we go ahead with implementing the same. So I now hand it over to Karpagam to actually continue with service automation. Over to you, Karpagam.
Hello everyone, this is Karpagam here. Broadly looking at service automation, we can talk about SOA service automation and RESTful service automation separately. Coming to SOA service automation, here the developers share the WSDL they are going to use with the QE folks. So what the QE folks will do is they will write the script based on the WSDL the developer shared, and they generate the XML request dynamically. They also take care about having placeholders for endpoints. As Divya was mentioning earlier, this helps the developers to use the same test suite developed by the QE folks to test it once they are done with the development. Let me explain how service automation, especially SOA service automation, is done with an example. So the first step here is to create a property file with all the service details. As I was mentioning earlier, it has WSDL details, endpoint URL. So here the endpoint URL can be configured if the developer needs to use the test suites for his testing. So other details with respect to service are mentioned in this property file. The second step is to create a test data generator to generate the request from the WSDL obtained from the PD team. Here, the WSDL is passed and the request is generated. The information like port type name, operation name, unbinding name, etc. can be fetched from the property file created earlier.
For example, take a use case where we want to test a card service. The request to the card service could have 9 items or it could have 11 items. So the requests are generated dynamically instead of configuring it manually. The next is to create the test data generator file that generates the request by passing the whistle. So here we'll set all the request parameters pertaining to a particular operation in the service, and the test data generator is invoked to create the request. And the next is the test plan. So here every method corresponds to a test case. For example, consider the following test plan where it's trying to make a service call with a valid order ID. So all the input arguments for this request are set, and then the request is invoked, and then the response is fetched from the service, and it is asserted against the acknowledgement. The final step is to execute the test.ng file. It can be considered as validating a use case where we can give a sequence of test cases to be executed. So in this case, we have only one test case that has to be executed, that is calling the service call with a valid order ID. So this is how service automation is achieved for SOA services. The next is RESTful service automation. So QA scope here is to test the RESTful services, which eventually means that they are going to request a URI through a HTTP methods like get, post, put, and delete. By passing the request data type in any of the following formats, say mostly it would be XML or JSON. In rare cases, it could be YAML. And asserting the response object as we saw in the SOA automation case. So during the development phase, once the development team freezes the design of the RESTful services, the URIs and the respective request and response objects will be shared with the QE folks. The request response object which are being developed will be pushed as artifacts to Maven repo. Since the QE parallel automation project is Maven based, the test automation will be started during the development phase, as we are seeing it in other cases like web automation and SOA service automation. So with this approach, we are able to achieve mainly two things. One is no manual test effort, and the other one is minimal sign-off time. So the first step here is to create JSON objects. These JSON objects can be used in the test plan. And we could define generic methods in a utility class which could be used across different test plans. So the third one is the actual test plan where the JSON object is used and all the values with respect to JSON objects are set. And the request is created to the service that we want to test, and the response is fetched from the service, and we could assert it against the experience we expect. Okay, we have explained the benefits of parallel automation. Now we are going to see the benefits in a broader sense. The first one, the most important benefit is smooth dev to QE transition. Since QE is involved earlier in PDLC process, this enables QE to understand the design and implementation better. So they'll be able to draft a complete set of positive, negative, and corner test cases, as Divya was mentioning earlier. During dev to QE, unlike earlier, dev does not run any manual test suite. Instead, they triggers an automated test suite to check the validity of the deliverable being handed over.
So the main important benefit to Kiwi here is the better quality code and no blockers. The second most important thing is 100% functional test cases automated in parallel to code development. Test cases, as we all know, could be grouped as functional, non-functional, and integrational, etc. So what we are able to achieve 100% functional test cases automated in parallel to code development. So this enables both dev and QE to test the feature in a better manner. As Divya was mentioning earlier, this helps when new components are developed over the current deliverable. Automation could be reused completely. It also reduces 70% manual testing effort. In regular PDLC process, a considerable amount of time is definitely spent in integration, regression, automation, and certification across various platforms. With automation being completed before dev to create, tremendous manual effort that would have gone into regression and certification across various platforms is reduced. Automated suits were used from first day of feature testing. So here is the statistics which calls out the bugs captured by our parallel automation during dev cycle. So here you could see that before even feature testing is started, we are able to capture a certain amount of bugs. So the devs can concentrate on these bugs and fix it before even giving the feature to the QE. So these are the total bugs logged. Among these, nearly half of them could be addressed and fixed before giving it to the QE people. So once feature testing is done, we can look for corner cases and we can guaranteedly say that 100% the product is perfect. So that's it from our end. Thank you so much. Hopefully parallel automation could be adopted in many of the methodologies. I think it's a useful session for you folks. Try to achieve parallel automation and try to have a good quality code. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We have started receiving a couple of questions. Do you want me to start sharing them with you, Divya?
Sure. Yes, please go ahead.
And in the meanwhile, I would request all the attendees to post more queries. You will find the question in the questions window, Divya and Karpagam.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, the first question I have is from Shivakumar, and the question is, what is the API you have used to generate that SOAP request? So what we use is something called as SOA membrane. That is actually an open source tool which can be used to parse your WSDL and generate your SOAP request. So what happens is, all that you have to give is the binding name, the port type, and the operation name to the tool, and the WSDL, of course, point the tool to the WSDL, and what it does is it will generate the SOAP request for you. But the one thing that you have to take care of is, say for example, you have a service to create a cart with say 9 items or maybe 10 items, and your use cases are different for different number of items in the cart. So what you have to take care to do is you have to know how to iterate through those, so that you'll be able to, through those repetitive XML tags, so that you'll be able to create either 9 items or 10 items. And of course injecting the test data as well into these. That is not available in the tool, that you'll have to do on your own. But what the tool gives you is to generate the request from the WSDL. I'll move on to the next question. The next question is from Devesh Sharma. His question is, can you please explain a little more about property files as used in cross-browser testing? And he says he's very new to the subject. Okay, so here it is. So the property file which we use here for spec validation is more to locate every UI component in the page. So it's more like you have, say your button is located at a certain location which you identified by pixels, like say probably like 10, 10 pixels or something like that, X and Y coordinates basically of that particular UI component, be it a button or be it an image or whatever it is. So what we store in the property file is, for every UI component there's going to be an ID associated. So we store the ID along with its X and Y components, basically X and Y coordinates. So what will happen is, so on, say like I told you, the base browser is nothing but Firefox. So in Firefox, if my X and Y component for this particular button element is 10, 10, and in Internet Explorer it's say 200, 10, it means that my button is completely misplaced. So I put that also in another property file, and I verify these two property files to see if at least there is, a closer match between those two. Not a complete match, because a complete match cannot be expected across all the browsers. I hope I've answered the question. The next question is from Sanjay Shetty. He says, I work in a 2-week sprint in Agile methodology. Wouldn't follow parallel automation be very time consuming in such a short time frame? From what I have understood, there is a dependency on the development team for a lot of things in parallel automation. This means a high level of teamwork is required between the PD and QE to achieve this. Wouldn't this be time consuming and affect productivity? So when you have a particular feature, you would definitely, the PD folks will definitely be deciding on the design, on the architecture and all that, right? So what we are trying to tell you is spend some time with, let QE and PD sit together and make that design decisions, so that the QE is aware of what design decisions are going on, and the PD is also aware of what the QE exactly needs, and exchange the information then and there. So if you have a 2-week sprint, I'm pretty sure you will be starting your development only after half of the first week, after you go through at least first half of the week. So which means you have at least 3 days of time to actually decide on the design and everything. And what we are asking you to share to your QE folks is not much. Like for web automation, it's just going to be about your page IDs and all those things, and you will still, even before the PD starts developing the code, the WSDL is going to be ready, and all that you have to share is the WSDL. And similarly, even for web services, you'll already have drafted the JSON request, and you have decided that this is how my request and response is going to be. Only on top of that, you'll be developing your services. So you can always share all this information with the QE folks, and simultaneously, now anyways, when you're developing, your QE folk is going to actually sit simply doing nothing, or probably working on the previous sprint features or something like that. But during that time, they can actually spend time on automation, so that, instead of spending 1 week in testing, you can reduce it to half week of testing, because all your test cases are automated. And if you do not follow automation, what happens is you tend to spend more time on testing, and when you have to, like if there's going to be a bug fix, you again have to manually go and test it again. Instead, when there's a bug, and you also have to test to see if whether if this bug fix has not broken any other cases as well. But if you have automation, what happens is, if there's a bug fix, you can just execute all the cases once again to make sure that not only that bug has been fixed, but also none of your other cases are broken. So this will actually result in a very high quality code, and it will also save a lot of time from both the testing end and the bug fix end. The next question is from Shrikant, and he says he would like to know what are the automation tools that we are using in parallel automation. So here in our company, we use some internal tools, but it's all built upon HTML unit and Selenium WebDriver only. But we have some other extensions made on, we built some other things on top of this tool to cater to our needs. The next question is from Shivakumar. He says, can you please elaborate a bit over SOA services testing and how it is done? So SOA service testing is nothing but you have your XML response and your, XML request response. So it's all about generating your request, assigning test data to that, and then getting your response and checking for your acknowledgement or whatever error messages you're expecting to get in that particular response. So when it comes to SOA service testing, there are two ways of doing it. Either you can try to dynamically generate the request, the XML request from the WSDL, or you can create templates. So what you can do is, when you have your XML request, you can, for all the test data, you can have it as variables, which can be read from the Java file into the XML file. You can either do that, creating templates. So if you have something like a simple service where you need to create a cart with n items, where you have the item title along with some item description for all the n items, then you can actually draft a template and have placeholders for these 9 items, 9 different items in your template. Or you can also use the WSDL and generate those repetitive XML tags 9 times, so that, and you can insert the test data. And then you need to hit an endpoint, which can either be the dev box or the test environment, and then get the response. Then again you have to use an XML parser to parse the response and fetch the acknowledgement and see if it is what is expected. And besides the acknowledgement in your response, you'll have things like probably a cart ID or a username against which the cart was created or something like that. So those details also you can use an XML parser, get those details, and use assertion statements to see if that is what is expected. The next question is from Manoj, and his question is how the QA team will rewrite the IDs of the controls as the code is still in development team's machine. I don't understand the question. The thing is, we don't have to rewrite anything. The IDs here are nothing but the element IDs. Like in your HTML pages, right? You have a button and you have an ID associated with it. That is the ID which we are talking about here, and that is not going to change, right? That's going to remain static throughout the development phase. Unless and until there's going to be a complete UI redesign, then the ID itself is lost. But the name of that, basically the identifier is not going to change. Even if you're going to change the button to another, to a link or something like that, the link can still have the same ID. The way you implement it might be different from the PD side, but at the end of the day, that particular UI component is going to have the same ID. And if the code is still in the development team's machine, see, in your local, you're going to execute how you're going to test. See, manually, once you finish your development, you're going to do your testing, right? In that case, you're going to run an Apache server. So you can just use your local machine's endpoint and then put it in that CI and then execute the jobs. So nothing is going to change here dynamically. The IDs, everything is going to remain static here. I hope I've answered your question. So that's all the questions we have. Any more questions?
Yes, Divya, I'm just sending you some more.
Yeah, sure.
I hope you're receiving the questions.
Yeah, I'm receiving them. I'm just going through it. So the next question is from Samir. And the question is, do you have some sample code for parallel testing in .NET? I am sorry, we currently do not have any sample codes in .NET, but whatever we are using in Java, the same thing can be extended to .NET as well. There are a lot of frameworks which are available for automation in .NET. See, irrespective of the coding language, what we are trying to convey here is the methodology to be used, the process basically, that you can use parallel automation while development is being done. Automated suites can also be developed. That is what we are trying to tell you. There's no specific tools or something like that. There's no restriction in that. You can use any tool and you can still achieve parallel automation. The next question is from Mr. Prakash Narasimhan, and his question is, what is the complex part of parallel automation? The complexity lies in teamwork. It all depends on how well you are connected with each other. Basically, the PD and QE folks are how well they are connected with each other and how much of information they are willing to share and how quickly they are willing to share. It's all about teamwork here. So everything is like from the beginning itself, from the requirement phase through the design phase to the development phase, you need to sit together, both PD and QE needs to sit together and draft out a plan to come up with parallel automation. The difficulty lies only in early sharing of details, like the WSDL and everything. This actually also helps in early feature completion, and when the feature delivery is done also, we can make sure that 100% P1 P2 cases are P1 P2 bugs are eliminated. Okay, and the next question is from Rahul Verma. In the process of parallel development described in the webinar, the same automation suite is being run by PD and QE, right? So when QE team runs the same test again on the dev to QE build, is it not just a repeat or regression test instead of feature test when same tests have already been run by my PD? Yes, you're absolutely right. It's just another regression only. But the thing is, see, your dev team is not going to run all the cases. Okay, like for one particular service, you will probably have like 50 cases, and because all that they have to do is only execute all the P1 and P2 cases, but nothing is stopping them from executing all the cases. If they're able to execute all the cases, then well and good. It saves a lot of time from your end also, and you can concentrate on all your manual testing efforts. Like if you have to test on various other devices, you can spend more time on that, and you can also try to figure out all your corner cases and concentrate more on security testing and then load and performance and all those things. So this gives you ample enough time to actually not miss any bugs and make sure that your feature is 100%, it has 100% good quality. And these automation suites will also be helpful for regression as well. Yes, that's very true, because especially when there are frequent change requests, especially when you have agile methodology and your business suddenly decides that there's going to be a new feature added or a new feature modified, you can always use these tests to see what are the cases that are getting affected and what are the cases which will fail if this feature is going to be developed. Or once the feature is developed, you can test out and make sure that none of the other cases are failed. And like I already mentioned earlier, every time a bug is logged, you need to make sure that the fix has not broken any of the other existing features, which means you cannot go and manually test each and every feature every time there's going to be a bug fix. So every time there's a bug fix, just execute your automation once, and that's it. You're done. You're done. You don't have to take that much time at all for feature testing. The next question is from Sanjay. How is this methodology better or different than test-driven development? Okay, so test-driven development is more about having stubs. That is, earlier in your development phase itself, see, that is more, and it's more about writing JUnits. So what you do there is you have all your placeholders, and you're not very sure about any of the test data or something like that. Only after you finish your development, you get all those things, and again you have to go and update those stubs and then come back to it. But with parallel automation, what happens is you have all the details required for your functional testing concrete. All your details are concrete, and you don't have to make any modification unless and until there is an extremely drastic change in the requirement. And definitely parallel automation is more or less like test-driven development. Only thing is that the initial stage, how you start off with, will be different. And test-driven development is more with JUnits, whereas parallel automation, we concentrate more on functional test cases. And having said that, since both JUnits and automation suites are being developed, the same thing can be converged and can be used for code coverage as well. The next question is from Shiva, and his question is this parallel testing only for services or for UI also? So this is for both UI and services. For UI, it is a little difficult when it comes to spec validation. Functional testing, you can 100% verify with UI automation. Spec validation, the reason why I'm saying it's difficult is because only after you develop the entire then you'll know how it looks. Of course, even after that, you'll have to spend some manual effort to actually see how it looks in one particular browser, and then a lot of time is reduced by verifying it across 5 other different browsers. So all that you have to do is, instead of spending time on 5 different browsers, you'll only be spending time on one browser and then execute your automation. So in that case alone, when it comes to spec validation alone, it's more of, it'll be more useful for the QE folks rather than the PD folks. And especially, and it can be more or less used only during your feature testing week. I'll move on to the next question. The next question is from Mitul. For parallel automation testing, do all testers need to train, or tester will do according to own strategy based on knowledge in your organization? It's based on the knowledge you have about your organization. You can use whatever strategy you want. It's all about how you come up with the process. Like I said, it's only about the process that needs to be followed, and how you want to do it is up to you. So, are there any more questions?
Yes, Divya, I'm just sorting and sending across.
Yeah, sure.
In case if there are any repetitions, please ignore those questions.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the next. I'm sorry, the next question is by Devesh. Little bit of off topic. In unit testing, you check state modified in system, value returned from method. What do you check in functional testing in relation to website? And how do you create test cases? It's one example if possible. Okay, so what you test with UI is basically your integration. Now, definitely you'll have a backend and a front end, right? With UI or GUI in your website, when there's a button click, there's definitely something happening at the backend. That is, a service call is being made. So besides testing the service call and the web UI separately, what you can do is, when you click on it, it's basically your integrated testing that you have to check here. So you have to write your automation script such that you load the page, you go click on that button, and then you make sure that the service call is a success, and then you go and check at the back end, maybe your database or something like that, to see if that particular state transition has happened or not. And how do you create such test cases is basically how you write the test cases based on your requirements. Probably I could share the example with you a little later. I hope you're fine with that. The next question is from Mitul. And while testing, raised bugs are manually reported or automatic reported by whatever tool, while executing parallel tests having runtime error faced in execution. We actually have bugs logged in a particular tool. So whether it's going to be by the developers or by the QE folks. So the developers, they make use of the automation and test it out and see. And then based on that, they log developer bugs. And similarly, during feature testing, whatever is identified by the QE folks, that will be logged as feature bugs. And your question, I'm not able to understand it that well, but let me just try to. While executing parallel tests, having runtime error faced in execution. I guess what you're trying to ask here is if we face any errors while executing the automation suite as well. Of course, things like that are bound to happen, but in that case, our developers will be very flexible in reporting that to us, and we can quickly just check what the problem is, and we can quickly fix it and give it for them to continue their testing. The next question is from Sachin Prakash. Could you please elaborate how to do security testing and what are the points you cover? We actually have a separate team for security testing, but we at least make one level of sanity check. We verify to see if all the pages which are needed to be secured are secure, and we make sure that none of the sensitive information like username or any of the personal information like address or anything like that is not logged anywhere or is not passed over the URL. And we have some other hacking tools to check to make sure that JavaScript injection does not happen. And similarly, we also check for cross-site scripting as well. So that's it with the questions.
Yes, I think you have covered almost all the questions. I'm still checking quickly. Okay, there is
Yeah, sure.
one more question from Sanjay Shetty. I'm just assigning the question to you.
Yeah. Okay, the question is from Sanjay Shetty. The question is, you have a lot of focus on Selenium when explaining parallel automation. Will this be difficult with some other tools that use object identification from the application like QTP or Silk? No, it really doesn't matter what kind of tool you use. This is just one of the tools which we are using here. You can use whatever tool you want. Just to reiterate again, it's just the process that needs to be followed. And the way of implementation, it's all left up to you. Whatever tool you're comfortable with, you can just go ahead and use that.
I think we got one more question.
Yeah, sure.
The question is from Siva.
Yeah, the question from Shiva is, how come we can go for automation testing without completing manual testing? Okay, it's, as and when you start writing your automated scripts, you'll actually try to, you'll realize how easy it is. But initially, yes, you'll be a little worried to see how well your automation scripts are going to be performing. But then again, you have to try it out and see. So as and when you write it, you'll understand what difficulties you face, and every time you go on for the next feature, you'll be able to overcome those difficulties, and your automation scripts will be quality proof. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that, see, no code written is perfect, but what we are trying to say is you can achieve that by proper interactions with your PD folks and proper, adjustments with each other.
Okay, I
And
think
you can also spend some amount of manual testing also as well, so that you can actually make sure that whatever scripts you have developed are perfect. And since developers will anyways be using it for dev testing, they can also authenticate it for you. Yeah, so next question.
Yeah, I think that's about it. We still have around 12, 14 odd minutes left, so I'm going to request all the attendees to send in more queries because we have Divya and Karpagam with us for another 10, 12 odd minutes. In the meanwhile, Divya, if you have anything else to share with our attendees, maybe any demo or any other slide which you which you would want to go ahead with, please feel free to do the same. And we'll wait for a couple of minutes and see if we are getting more questions in the meanwhile.
Sure.
Okay, we have two more questions. I'm just sending both to you.
Yeah, sure.
I hope you have received those questions, Divya.
Sure, yeah. Okay, I think it's a follow-up question from Shiva. In Agile, we are having very less time, and debugging the code may take more time, isn't it? Yes, it might take more time, but what I'm trying to tell you is, See, unless and until you implement it and go through the pains of it, you will not know what exactly it is and how easy it is to actually do the development for parallel automation. It is very simple, it is very easy, because all that you're doing is you're just translating your test cases into automated scripts. So most of the times, at least, I can assure you that it will not go wrong. But if at all something goes wrong, you can always correct it immediately and you can do it. It is not that difficult.
Divya, I have given you 3 more questions.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at it.
And I have received a couple of more. I'm just going to assign them to you.
Yeah, sure. So let me just answer Sachin's question first. How will you perform testing for web services? So during the design phase itself for web services, you're going to decide on what your JSON objects are going to be. And 1 second, please hold on. Just give me a couple of minutes, please.
Sure, Divya, not a problem.
Yeah, so I'll just continue with the answer to the question. 1 second. So his question was, how will you perform testing for JAX WS based web services? So this is nothing but, like I was saying earlier, for web services, you have JSON objects designed, right? So similarly, you'll have even XML objects, right, for your web services. And so the similar method that you do, during the design phase, you will be deciding on how your XML objects are going to look, or how your request response are going to be. And based on that, you can create those objects and then write your automation suite in such a way that you can assign the test data. You can plunge in the test data into those objects and then translate your test cases into scripts. I hope I've answered your question. The next question is on how can we take care of last minute changes in parallel automation. Suppose I work in the 2-week sprint. If developer does the changes to the functionality in the last minute, how are we achieving the coverage? So your developer is not supposed to actually change it in the last minute, but in case if it comes up as a change request from your business team in the last minute, then what you can do is you know what the change is and you know what test cases, because you've written your test cases that are right. So you know what that change is going to affect. So what you can do is you can still run your automation suite against the existing, your existing automation suite against the new code changes and see what are the things that are failing. And based on that, decide if it is a valid failure or not, and then change your automation suite accordingly. The next question is from Rekha. Is there a facility similar to Selenium Grid that I can use to run WebRat or other similar framework browser automation tests in parallel across a farm of coordinated agents? I am not aware of any other tool except for Selenium Grid. Maybe you can Google and check it out, but I'm not aware of it. The next question is from Kuldeep. What about the controls with dynamic ID? How can we handle that in parallel automation? I don't understand what you mean by dynamic IDs. I think what you're trying to tell me is, say if you have containers with different like that, and each and every link will have an ID, say like A plus the item ID or something like that. I hope that's what you're trying to ask me. Then in that case, what you can do is, you'll know what is expected, right? You'll know what are the item IDs that are going to come up in that particular page. you know what, because that's because you are writing the test and you know that is the expected result, that is what is supposed to be loaded in your particular web page. So in that case, you can actually append, based on that, you can actually append those IDs to that particular element component, and then you can do your testing. So this way you can also verify if the correct components are getting loaded on the page or not. The next question is from Manju. Which automation tool is most widely used in IT industry? Which tool will need to concentrate for good career? Will I need to concentrate for good career? The most widely used automation tool, as far as I've seen, is one is you have Silk, and the other one is your Selenium WebGrid as well. Both of these are widely used, and Selenium WebGrid is what will help you a lot, from what I've seen. And there was, I think I missed one question from Rekha. What is the difference between parallel automation and V-mode? I think V-mode is more like a process development cycle, whereas parallel automation is a methodology which needs to be followed during your process development. Are there any more questions?
No, I think Divya, we have covered all the questions that we got. Let me quickly, give me just a minute. Let me quickly scroll down and see if there are any more.
Sure, sure.
Yes, we do have 3 more questions. I'm sending it across to you.
Yeah, sure. The question is from Sanjay. What is the appropriate QE-PD ratio of resources needed in a team to achieve parallel automation successfully? Maybe you can give us an example of how many QE resources you have in your team. Well, parallel automation is very useful, especially if you have less number of QE resources. So in our team, we have the ratio is 5:2. We have 5 PD resources and 2 QE resources. And because it's parallel automation, we do not face any of these last minute hiccups or anything like that, and we always have a smooth release.
I've sent you 2 more questions.
Good, connections with your team.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, sure.
I was just saying that I've sent you 2 more questions.
Yeah, sure. The thing is, if you have extremely good connections with both your PD and QE, if each of you have extremely good connections with each other, everything is going to be extremely smooth, and everything is going to be very simple as well. Irrespective of the number of PD or QE folks we have extremely smooth transitions because of that, and parallel automation actually plays a very important role in that. The next question is from Sachin about the Node.js app being tested. Currently, we haven't done that as yet, so I'm not very sure about it. Okay, there's another question on from Shiva. I'm implementing the same for services with QTP. Just want to know how come it is possible for UI. Actually, I need to work on this in the next sprint. What are the major suggestions you will suggest me? See, for UI, functional testing is always possible. Like I said, what you can possibly do is first ask your PD folks, before development itself, you'll have mocks, right, for your UI design. So ask them to give you all the element IDs, or you give them all the element IDs, saying that, asking them to use it like, for this button, you ask them to use like button as an ID or something like that. Some reference for you to identify those page components. So once you do that, you can actually probably go through Selenium WebDriver and see how you can implement automation using automation for UI, and then you can create your pages. So creating pages is nothing but assigning all those, identifying the links and assigning IDs to those links, identifying buttons or identifying images or whatever be the components on your particular UI that you want to verify. And then you need to write different methods to actually perform a button click. You have all these methods are already available with Selenium WebKit. All that you have to do is extend these web components and try to implement that in your application. So once that is done, right, step-by-step verification also can be done in your test plans. Say, your use case is to go to the next page. You enter a particular, say, Google search engine. You're going to enter a particular thing and then click on enter, and then you want a list of suggestions to be shown. So what you can do is you will get the ID for that particular text box, and then you say text box dot type of whatever test data you want to type in that particular text box, and then you say search button dot click. So once you do that, the page is going to get reloaded with different values, and then you can use assertion statements to see if what you expect is gotten loaded or not. So in this case, you'll have dynamic links as well, but all those dynamic links, you'll know that certain things are expected out of the dynamic links. So based on what results are expected, even though those links are going to be generated dynamically, you know what is going to be expected, and based on your expectations, you can again write the assertions and you can verify your UI accordingly. Yeah, I think I've covered all the questions.
Yes, Divya, you have covered all the questions, and I would like to thank you so much for taking time out. In fact, we usually take questions for 15 minutes, but today we took questions for over half an hour, which is really great, and I hope all the attendees got their share of questions answered today. And if there are more questions for our speakers today, please feel free to come on techgeek.com and post your queries on our discussion forum. Divya and Karpagam, I would request both of you to also log in to techgeek.com's discussion forum and post your answers there. This is really a great page where everyone can view the questions and participate in the relevant discussion which is going on. And
yeah, sure.
For those who missed out on some part of today's webinar, please feel free to come tomorrow on techgeek.com by afternoon. We should have the webinar's recording uploaded on the site. Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you so much, Karpagam, for the lovely presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.